Right. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being so punctual this morning. I appreciate it for the early start. All right. Just a reminder, Ms. Hurt, you're still under oath, okay? All right. Next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Amber, when did the first act of physical violence by Mr. Depp occur?
Objection asked and answered.
No, overruled. Go ahead.
It would have been early 2012.
And how did you determine this?
I reviewed my therapist's Objection, notes. hearsay.
She hasn't even answered it, Your Honor.
All right. I'll allow the answer.
By reviewing my therapist's notes. Objection,
All right.
hearsay.
I'll sustain the objection.
Your Honor, but it's not offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. It's explaining what she looked at.
I'll sustain the objection.
Okay. When did you earlier believe the first act of physical violence occurred?
Well, I had always believed up until recently that it had started later, that the violence started around early 2013, not early 2012.
Now, you testified earlier that the first act of physical violence by Mr. Depp related to the Winona Wino tattoo. Do you recall that testimony?
I do.
Okay. Does that change your testimony, realizing that this is earlier? Was this, in fact, still the first act?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
What was the first act?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
How do you remember the first act of violence?
Well, you never forget it. That's how I remember it. It changes your life forever. You never forget the first time someone hits you like that. I just had the date wrong.
Okay. And how is it that you think you got the date wrong?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
I'm embarrassed to say I think I would have liked to have believed that the period of time in which I had to fall in love with Johnny, in which we fell in love and he was sober and he wasn't violent to me, lasted for a lot longer than it did. I think I would have liked to have believed that I wasn't hit so early in the relationship and still stayed. He was also sober for a period in 2012, which was a peaceful time for us, in which we fell in love. So I had kind of allowed myself, I guess, to forget that the beginning of that period, 2012, before he got sober, was really violent and chaotic as well. I'm embarrassed to say that.
Now, you testified that the police were called multiple times. Other than the May 21, 2016, what other occasions were there where the police were called?
They were called in December of 2011. They were called in 2012. They were called in 2013 in March by the landlord. I had sought advice from Laurel Anderson as to whether I should call the police following Objection, the December. hearsay.
Sustain.
Okay. When you filed the domestic violence temporary restraining order, how many acts of abuse did you allege at that time?
I gave the last couple, I believe, last two incidents, maybe three.
And why didn't you tell of all the acts of abuse at that time?
I was following advice from my counsel.
Okay. How many instances of abuse were included in the UK trial?
There were 14 acts of physical abuse and violence and 3 acts of sexual abuse. Violence.
And why were those 17 included in the UK trial?
Well, I was not a party, a direct party. I was a witness, so it was whatever their counsel, the Sun Council, chose.
Okay. When is the first time you were called upon to provide a detailed accounting of as many times as you could recall of physical and sexual abuse by Mr. Depp?
Objection, hearsay.
That's not hearsay, Your Honor. I'm asking her when she was called upon to do so.
Well, the objection is hearsay.
Right, but it's not offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted, and it's just asking for date.
All right, overruled.
Thank you.
A few months ago, February in 2022, this year, was the first time I was asked to do so, other than cold in a deposition.
Okay. And when you were asked to provide those, what did you do to be able to prepare that accounting, that full accounting?
Well, I had the benefit of my therapist.
Objection, hearsay.
So, Your Honor, she's not saying what the therapist said. I'm just asking.
I'll overrule the objection.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I looked at my therapist notes. I had the benefit of those notes, which we had received in February, as well as I reviewed calendars, photos, text messages, my journals, my diaries, of which there were many. I put all of those together. It took a lot of time to be able to, adequately refresh my recollection and fill in the details over the course of the 5 years we were together.
And what did you do when you put that all together?
I kind of filled in and collected all of these various pieces of information and gave a fuller account as best I could for each incidents of violence that I had record of. I think it was called an interrogatory.
In this case?
In this case,
All right.
excuse
Did
me.
you sign that under oath?
I did.
Okay. And it was provided to counsel for Mr. Depp?
It was.
Okay. And was it a pretty lengthy document?
It was far too long.
And how is it that you didn't just remember all of those events like this?
That's not how your memory or my memory works. We were together for 5 years, almost 4.5, and it was a very violent, chaotic, at times very loving, emotional relationship. So as anyone can imagine, there was a lot going on, and unfortunately the violence became almost normal, especially towards the end. It was just, it's hard to say that now, but the violence was almost normal. And, your brain does with trauma what it does, puts it away best you can. So I was frankly, I was shocked to see a lot of the information presented to me through my therapist notes, because she was taking them in real time.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
All right, I'll sustain that objection.
Okay, we'll move past what the therapist said in her notes. Okay. Now, there's one more. You also provided a declaration in this case early on. Do you recall that, trying to move the case to California?
Yes, there was a declaration in 2019.
All right. And did you describe some of the events of violence in that declaration?
Objection, leading.
What, if anything, was said about violent acts in that declaration?
I was taking the advice of my counsel. We had it was to get it moved, I believe.
Okay. And was there, did you include all of them?
No.
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
Thank you.
No, I did not include all of the incidents of violence. That was not the point of making this declaration. We were making this declaration in an effort to move it to California, because as hard as it is to go through this sort of trial as it is, it's even harder to do so in a place that neither Johnny nor I are connected to.
Okay. Now, you testified earlier about guitars, and you said you've never played a guitar. Have you ever played a guitar player in a movie?
You could say I posed with a guitar. It turns out I am an unteachable.
Okay. I'm going to take you to the tape recordings. Why did you and Mr. Depp start taping each other?
Well, at first it was meant to be a way to get to the heart of some of our communication issues, in order to discover in a therapeutic fashion kind of what was some of our issues in our communication.
Okay. Now, we heard an audio tape earlier during this trial in which you said the word couch repeatedly. Can you please explain to the jury what that meant?
couch was a word that we had been given, that we decided upon, rather.
Objection, hearsay.
Just tell us what Mr. Depp said about this.
That it was a safe word. It was meant to be a safe word, like a word, like truce, where you put down the proverbial guns and you say, truce, we're not fighting anymore. Couch was supposed to be a word that you used, or that we used, as a truce. I don't want to fight anymore. You win. Let's stop this. That was the mention of couch, which you heard earlier in a recording.
Now, what, if any, discussions did you have with Mr. Depp about threatening to divorce each other or threatening to leave?
Objection calls for hearsay to
I'm
the extent
asking
it
for-
calls for misheard statements.
I'm asking for discussions with Mr. Depp.
It's still her.
Just tell us what Mr. Depp said, don't tell us what you said.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. What did Mr. Depp say in your discussions about the use of the term threatening to divorce or threatening to leave each other?
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
Well, Johnny would always say the only way out of this was death. But in fights, in particularly heated ones, we had found, we were using divorce in the fight, in some of our heated fights. We tried not to, but that kind of deteriorated after the December incident that I got beat up pretty badly in, and after that point, it was used a lot more often.
Okay. Now, March 26, 2015, this is after the first Australia trip and after the staircase incident. I'm going to ask, Michelle, can you bring up Depp Exhibit 371A? This is a tape recording, and it's going to be at 1 minute, 1:01 to 2:29.
Could you say that times again?
Yes, it's 1:01 to 2:29. And if we could, I don't know whether you had turned up that volume. I know it's hard to hear these.
Is this in evidence already?
I'm moving it into evidence, Your Honor, but these are the tape recordings between the two, which I think we had agreed.
Is there any objection to 371A?
Your Honor, if you just give me a moment to confirm there's no other voices.
Plaintiffs. Yes, that's it. It's not in evidence, I'm sorry.
It's not in evidence, Your Honor, so could you please confirm that there are no other voices?
I will confirm that.
Okay, all right.
And it's Depp's exhibit.
Right.
It's Mr. Depp's exhibit.
Plaintiffs 371A then, any objection?
No objection.
Okay, 371A in evidence. Thank you.
And we may need to, Sammy, if you listen, and we may need to turn that volume up. Sometimes your control is a little bit better than what we have, Max.
I see somebody who's changing always into different versions of a person that I recognize for a brief moment, and then he slips away, and he disappears. And then I get a different version of him. I get the insecure, scared version of him that lashes out in a different medium every time. So if it's Adderall Junkie Johnny, then he's abusive, and he's a bully, and he's a tyrant, and he's mean, he's reactionary, and he's incendiary, and anything I do and say is cause for violence or anger. If I speak to him honestly, bluntly, from the heart, I'm yelling at him. If I argue back with him, then I'm abusive. If I don't say anything, then I am dismissive or absent or what's wrong or somewhere else. If I engage with him, I'm part of the problem. I'm yelling, I'm mean. If I don't engage with him, then I'm mean. I'm part of the problem. No matter what I do, I'm fucked. Because if I look at him the wrong way, he's a problem. If I say the wrong thing, God knows what it is. I'm the problem. I'm the problem. Either way. That's the guy who's on a bunch of fucking speed.
What did you mean when you were saying that to Mr. Depp?
That no matter, my perception was that no matter what I did, no matter what I did to de-escalate, walk away from him, to confront him, to try to, nothing I did made a difference. Nothing I did changed his rage at me. Nothing I did changed the violence towards me. Nothing I did calmed him down. And I was constantly doing a juggling act of what kind of version of Johnny I was dealing with. There were different versions of him, and they were drastically different from one another, and even more so than them being different from one another, they didn't even sometimes remember what the other version did or said. They acted almost like independent versions of this person, depending on what combination of drugs and alcohol he was on. That's what I was trying to express to him. It's just the futility of me responding and successfully, and the futility of trying to constantly negotiate with him and the substances he was on at the time.
I'm going to take you to April 15, 2015, the premiere of When I Live My Life Over Again. What, if anything, did you do for that premiere?
I believe that premiere was in New York City. It was a small independent film I shot. I went back to New York to attend the premiere.
Michelle, can you bring up Defendant's Exhibit 421, please? Does this accurately depict the scene portrayed in this picture?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of Defendant's Exhibit 421.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, 421 in evidence.
May we publish to the jury? Thank you. Amber, could you please describe for the jury what this picture is?
That is a picture of me a few months, I believe this is April of 2015, so it's a few months after the March incident that happened in Australia, early March, in which Johnny held me down on the countertops and my arms were cut on the glass in that attack.
And if we could draw attention to your arm there, are those scars? What are those? Please describe for the jury what those are.
Those are scars that I obtained while Johnny was strangling me and assaulting me on the countertop in Australia.
Okay. Michelle, can you bring up Defendant's Exhibit 423, please? And does this accurately portray the scene shown?
Yes, that's...
Oh, hold on a second. I'm going
Yes.
to move the admission of Defendant's 423, please.
No objection.
423 in evidence.
Thank you. May we publish? All right, and please describe to the jury what this shows.
It is a picture of me on a red carpet. You can see my scars. Even though I have makeup on them, they're a bit harder to cover because they're rather fresh.
Okay. Now, after this, in April of 2015, you returned to Australia with Mr. Depp, did you not?
Objection leading.
Overruled, I'll allow it.
Thank you.
Yes, we did.
Okay, and tell the jury about that trip.
Well, after Johnny was able to get clean off of the coke and the other drugs enough to get the hand surgery he needed, there commenced a period of time of sobriety for Johnny. His doctor had fired him and then came on when Johnny agreed to get clean.
Objection,
So there was-
hearsay, non-responsive.
Don't say what, I mean, we've already had the testimony from Dr. Kipper, but don't say what Dr. Kipper did, just tell the other part, just don't say what somebody else said. Okay?
So there was this period of sobriety after that, and Johnny was very committed to being clean and sober, and I thought we had finally done it. We finally did it. We were through it, and we were never going back, meaning he was going to be clean and sober for good this time, and we had a wonderful period of, we felt back in love, or deeper in love than we were before. It seemed things were so good. We were talking about a future again. We were talking about having kids. I mean, when Johnny wasn't using it, was so peaceful. We had we had a good time together. We went back to Australia like that, in that state, and had a few months. We even had my parents come and visit us in Australia, and we were talking about babies and about buying a farm and, you know, looking for homes in California. And we were in a really beautiful, peaceful period. It was wonderful. It was wonderful.
Now, how did you stay at the same place that you did the earlier time in Australia?
We went back to a very remodeled version of that home. I mean, remodeled, very cleaned up version of that home. Same walls, same structure, but looked a bit different, as you can imagine.
How did you feel going back to that home, given what had happened in March, early March?
You know, the home isn't the problem. You know, if you're living in domestic violence, you don't just not go home. You know, you don't just not go into the kitchen just because you were slapped in that kitchen. People living in domestic violence live in their homes. That's almost, you know, the home isn't the problem. That's the normal part of your home. And for me, you know, Johnny was my home. Where we were a couple was my home. And that home was often really violent. But it wasn't the structure itself. It was Johnny. And when we went back to Australia, that home, Johnny, was in a completely different, you know, he had done a complete 180. Clean, sober, present, calm. We were peaceful. I mean, any of the gripes and the problems that he seemed to have about me went away when he was sober. And so we managed to go back to that same house, but in a very different way. It felt very different.
June 16, 2015, the Magic Mike Tour. Where did you go for that tour?
While I was in Australia, I got the call for that press tour and went to Europe for the press tour for that movie. And, you know, I was nervous because problems arise when I'm having to work, when I leave.
Objection, non-responsive.
That was still responsive.
Well, sustain the objection. Next question.
Michelle, can you please bring up Defendant's Exhibit 447? I'm going to ask you first, does this accurately portray the scene depicted?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of Defendant's Exhibit 447.
No objection.
447 in evidence. You can publish.
Thank you. And Michelle, if you could zoom in just a little bit closer. Amber, could you tell the jury about this picture?
Yes, that's me on the red carpet promoting the Magic Mike movie I was in. You can see the scars on my body, on my arms.
Okay.
You can't see everything, of course, but...
Okay. And Michelle, can you bring up Defendant's Exhibit 449? And Amber, does this accurately depict the scene portrayed?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of Defendants 449.
No
All
objection.
right, 449 in evidence. Publish.
And Amber, could you please describe to the jury what this portrays?
This is, you can see the scars on my arm from that attack. Also around this time, Johnny was calling me on the phone before and after, you know, while I was doing these press events, and sometimes I would be on the phone with him, kind of managing accusations about why I didn't pick up sooner, didn't text back sooner, and sometimes I actually on this tour many times had to delay getting out of the car or...
Objection, non-responsive.
I'll ask that. How did Mr. Depp react to your going on this press tour?
He was very upset with me. I just remember crying on the phone with him a lot and having to hang up to go do press events.
All right. Thank you. Now, I'm going to take you to the Southeast Asia train trip. That was your honeymoon trip, correct?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And that was July 25, 2015?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Michelle, I'm going to ask you to bring up Plaintiff's Exhibit 162. It's already into evidence. Now, Mr. McGivern testified that he took this picture in July of 2013. Would you agree with that?
Objection, misstates prior testimony.
That's exactly what he testified to.
It was
It
Malcolm.
wasn't.
I have the transcript.
I don't know. Go ahead and ask your
It's
question.
Mr. McConnelly.
Is that correct?
I believe Malcolm Conley took this on the Orient Express.
Malcolm Connolly, not Travis McGivern?
I believe it was Malcolm on that trip with us, yes.
Okay, and was it in 2013 or was it 2015?
It was in 2015,
Okay.
July.
And please describe, if you can, what transpired during this trip.
Well, the train trip itself was peaceful up until Johnny wanted to start drinking brown alcohol. He had already started drinking champagne. When I returned from the press tour, that's what he was drinking, wine and champagne. When he rapped on Pirates 5, the plan was for us to do this honeymoon. I was walking a bit on eggshells because I know a pattern, but I was not wanting to accept that we had gone back to a pattern at all. And so we were on this train, and on the last night we were on the train, after this was taken, this photo, Johnny and I got in an argument about him wanting to be allowed, meaning him wanting me to agree to him drinking liquor and being okay with it. And an argument followed that in our sleeping car. Johnny slapped me across the face and held me up by got a hold of my neck and pushed me up against the wall of the cart. It was a small, narrow sleeper cart, and there were two beds, one on each side. He had me up against the wall while he was standing on the floor in between the beds, and I was on the bed, kind of half kneeling, half standing, trying to get his arms off my neck, and he was squeezing my neck against the railway car for what felt like a very long time. And every time he kind of would pull me away from the side of the car, he'd slam me up against the wall. And I remember looking down at him and trying to get his arms off of my neck. And I remember thinking that he could not even mean to kill me. I remember being scared that he wouldn't even mean to do it. And kind of looking down at him because I was slightly above him as he was standing on the ground, and kind of clawing at him, trying to get him to, his arms away from my neck. I remember I had at one point he ripped the top of my shirt. I don't really remember what it was, but I remember I had a breast exposed. At some point, I pull at his lapel of his shirt, and he rips the shirt off of him and wraps it around my neck. And that's how I woke up. The next morning, actually, I woke up with it still around my neck and with a giant knot in the back of my head.
Did you keep a diary at that time?
Yes, I did.
Michelle, can you bring up Defendant's Exhibit 461?
Objection, hearsay.
It is a diary, Your Honor, and I will just ask her some questions about it rather than trying to admit it into evidence at this point.
All right. I'll wait for the question. Go ahead.
What, if anything, do you recall about recording what transpired on that train?
Objection, hearsay.
I'm just asking her whether she did. I'm not asking what she recorded.
All right, I'll allow it. Go ahead. Overrule.
I wrote about what happened that night the next morning.
Thank you. Now, did Mr. Depp suffer any injuries on that trip?
Not that I saw. I have a lot of pictures from that trip, and he's uninjured.
Okay, thank you. You can take that down, Michelle, thank you. Now, I'm going to keep you in July of 2015, and Michelle, I'm going to ask you to bring up Depp Exhibit 390A. It's a recording, and I'm going to be asking about from 3:30 to 4:12. I'm going to move the admission, Your Honor. It's another recording between Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard. There's nobody else in
It's
there.
plaintiffs, what number was it?
It's plaintiffs, it's 390A.
Okay. Any objection to 390A?
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Okay.
May we approach?
Okay. Right. Any objection then?
No objection.
All right, 390A in evidence.
I saw you doing it earlier, whatever. It's fine. It's secretive. It's deceitful. You already you had trouble with me before when you said to me that you didn't feel like you were told when I was recording you. So please stop.
You didn't.
Please stop.
You did not tell me.
Please stop.
Fucking acknowledge what I'm saying before you keep making demands. You are not a school
Okay.
teacher. Shut
Okay.
the fuck up.
Don't
Listen
shut
to me, and then you can fucking respond. Understand? You ain't nobody's fucking mom. You ain't no school teacher. Don't fucking pretend to be authoritative with me.
Okay, fine.
You don't exist.
Leave it on.
What were you discussing in that call?
We were discussing whether or not it was all right to record each other without the other's permission. And Johnny said it didn't matter anymore, the requirement of that permission from me. I was trying to say, hey, we agreed.
Okay. Let's go to August 2015. Please describe your relationship with Mr. Depp in that time frame.
You said August?
August 2015.
August 2015 was a very difficult time. Following the brief honeymoon we had, Johnny's use continued, well, it started again, is a better way to describe it. And lo and behold, so did our disagreements, coincidentally, not coincidentally. I got an offer to do a job, which was already a problem, or problematic. I was considering working on a TV series that had James Franco in it. I was asked if I would meet with the people who are making the show.
Objection, hearsay.
It's not offered to prove the truth of the matter, sir.
Overruled.
Thank you.
And so I was considering taking that job. And there was a possibility it would require brief nudity, which I knew I would have to negotiate down. But obviously that was a problem for Johnny. Didn't want me to do that. Didn't want me to work. And frankly, I needed to. And there was another film I had coming out that I had previously shot. It's called London Fields. It was a source of a lot of fighting between us because of the sexuality in the role. It was a constant negotiation between myself and the filmmakers. They made a film, and Johnny told me that he had heard about it, was unhappy with some of what he had heard. He was unhappy with me having done a sex scene in it that he claimed I didn't tell him about. I did not actually film the scene he was speaking of. He demanded that we watch a screener of it, which is like a version of the film before it's released. we got one sent to where we were at the time, Johnny's Chateau in France. It's in a remote part of France. And once again, we're in this remote place and we're screening this film that I appeared in, and there was a scene, a sex scene in that movie that started before Johnny freaked out because it looked like me. They had used a body double. Unbeknownst to me, without my permission, they used a body double to do a sex scene. So I have an incredibly jealous man who already is upset with me for breaking the rule that I had a sex scene. On top of that, I'm telling him it wasn't me. I didn't shoot that scene. And you can imagine how upset he was. He was irate and was calling me a liar, a whore, among other things. And we had this, that combined with the fact that I had even entertained doing this job that involved James Franco was a pressure cooker. I called it a week of hell later.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
Johnny at one point slapped me in the face in our bedroom in the chateau that we were staying in. At another moment, he punched me across the jaw. At one point, he kind of either pushed or threw. It's hard to describe to you which of those two it is because I can't tell you. I just know I went flying into this old church furniture. I later thought I had a concussion. It was the first time I thought I had sustained a concussion. And I wrote about it later.
Now, did there come a time in this time frame that you found a folder on Mr. Depp's computer?
Yes.
What was it labeled?
It was on Johnny's opening page, his desktop. It said, "No fun for JD," in all caps.
And what was in that folder?
It was a collection of pictures of me from various red carpets, starting on the press tours that I had been on, where it zoomed in pictures of what he thought was, like inappropriate clothing, side boob, cleavage, anytime I moved.
Objection calls for speculation.
All right. I'll sustain as to what she believes it was.
Okay. What pictures were in that folder that we have seen today?
The ones I saw of the kind of rose gold dress and the red dress were both in that file.
Now, what, if anything, did Mr. Depp say to you or ask you about how you got those cuts on your arms?
Nothing.
What, if anything, has Mr. Depp ever said to you or asked you about any injuries that you've sustained over those years?
Johnny's obviously never asked me how I got any of those scars.
Did you ever witness Mr. Depp self-injuring himself?
Often. He did that often.
Please tell the jury about that. What did he do?
I first started, I can't tell you what I told my therapist, but I almost called 911 in New York in 2014, August of 2014, I believe, because I thought he had done himself an injury. He often, in fights, would cut his arms or hold a knife to his chest or draw blood superficially at first, but later, like in 2016, especially as our relationship was ending. He also put cigarettes out on himself. He'd flick them at me, and once or twice tried to put one out on me, but mostly he would do it while screaming at me. He once did it right in front of me, screaming at my face as he put the cigarette out on his cheek.
Now, I'm going to take you to September 15, 2015, and Michelle, if we can bring up Depp exhibit, that's Plaintiff's Exhibit 345A. This is another audio recording, and it's 5:54 to 7:55. I'd like to move the admission, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, 345A in evidence. Thank you.
If you can play, Michelle, please.
I was gonna pour you one.
I'm an alcoholic. You should.
I don't have any control over how much you drink. But you don't have any control over whether I tell you the truth or not. Have you changed lately? Yeah, you've changed.
Well, your truth is really interesting too.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm the first
Give me a
person
glass
that's
of wine,
noticed.
please, so I can go downstairs.
Okay. Yes. Your escape route. I see.
Not escaping. I'll be back in 10
Oh,
minutes.
of course. 15 minutes, just like last time.
15.
Just like last time. When I had to pull you out of the bathroom. Well, when you passed out naked in the bathroom in there.
Did you pull me out?
Tried to.
Did it?
Yeah.
Did you get inside?
It didn't get inside.
Well, how did you try to pull me
By
out?
pounding on the door and waking you up every 15 minutes and then falling asleep next to the door so I could hear you snore in case if you vomited, I could call EMS if you ever stopped snoring.
Because you were
Because if
afraid I was going to die.
I thought you would choke on your own vomit, which is very likely with you.
Really?
Yes. Very
But I
likely.
vomit a lot.
Yes.
What?
Yes, you do vomit a lot in your sleep. Even
Really?
oh, it's news to you? Then this is affecting you a lot more than I thought it was.
I'll be here so good. I hope so.
What? You don't vomit a lot? Or you're telling me that? Look me in the eye. Tell me you don't vomit a lot. Go on, tell me you don't vomit a lot. You're always with me. Nice one that you try.
Please explain to the jury what the issue was in this particular tape recording.
Well, Johnny at the time was wanting to go and drink downstairs at a bar, and we were talking about 15 minutes because the last several times he had done that, it had been days. He'd disappear on a bender, get really sick, and you know the drill by now, having heard enough from me. So another issue that we were having at the time, or that he was having at the time, that affected me is that he would pass out and vomit, and vomited very, very regularly at this stage. He was obviously drinking again. I'd given up fighting with him on that at that stage. And what I had a habit of doing is turning him over onto his side so he doesn't choke on his own vomit. It's very common for people who do that to asphyxiate. At least that's what I understood. So the advice I got was to turn him to his side, put a pillow underneath his back, and turn his head so that he didn't asphyxiate. And one time I was doing that, and he swung at me, and I told medical. And the advice, after I got their advice, I realized I can't say what the advice was, but after I got that advice, I stopped doing that. I tried to, as much as I could, leave him and just be ready to call 911 or help if I heard him choking. And sometimes that happened behind bathroom doors.
Well, and that's going to take me to September 27, 2015. Again, Depp, that's Plaintiff's Exhibit 356A, and the recording is 3107 to 3230. I'm going to move the admission, Your Honor.
Any objection to that?
No objection.
All right, 356A in evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Michelle, thank you.
Lie!
And that you punched me in the
You're right.
fucking thing, and you
figured
in
it
the
out.
face, and you said, "No, fuck it, no, I didn't. What the fuck are you talking about?" And I watched
punch
you lie, and then
I
I
didn't punch you,
and
by
then
the
I-
way. I'm sorry that I didn't
You,
hit
punched
you
me.
across the face in a proper slap, but I was hitting you. It was not punching you. Babe, you're not punched.
Don't tell me what it feels like to be punched.
You know, even a lot of fights have been around a long time. I know. Yeah.
No, when you fucking have a closed
You
fist.
get punched. You got hit. I'm sorry I hit you like this, but I did not punch you. I did not fucking deck you. I fucking was hitting you.
You can't
I don't know
deck
what the motion of my actual hand was, but your fine. I did not hurt you. I did not punch you. I was hitting you.
How are your toes?
What am I supposed to do? Do this?
How are your
I'm not
toes?
sitting here bitching about it, am I? You are.
Oh,
That's the difference
you
between
poor
me and
toes.
you. You're a fucking baby.
Because you start
You
physical
are
fights?
such a baby.
Because
Grow
you-
the fuck up.
Because you start
Tony.
physical fights?
I did start a physical fight.
Yeah, you did, so I had to get the fuck out of there.
Yes, you did. So you did the right thing, the big thing. You know what? You are admirable. Every single time. What's your excuse when there's not a physical fight? Then what's the excuse there? You're still being admirable, right? Just by running away.
Amber, please explain to the jury what's transpiring in that audio recording, what that's about.
Well, there's two different situations that we're referencing in this fight, two different altercations between Johnny and I involving the door. The first of which we first start talking about, where I'm talking about hitting him, I am talking about what that conversation is about the disparity. The disparity between Johnny and I in our physical fights, the disparity of how he would proactively punch me and I would have to resort to reactively hitting him. I am talking about the difference between a punch, which Johnny did often, and me having to hit him in my defense. I know the difference between those two, and I'm highlighting the difference between those two, even if he wasn't twice my size. They're very different, and that's what I'm pointing out to him. The situation that involved, the context of that is, it happened in our bedroom up in Penthouse 3. You've heard us talk about that place. And I was trying to shut a door, our bedroom door actually. I was trying to barricade myself behind this door, and Johnny was trying to get through the door. He was using his body and his limbs to try to bust through the door as I was trying to keep it closed because I knew what he would do to me when he got to me on the other side. And I was hitting his arms, his body, as he was trying to prevent me from closing the door. And that is a separate incident that we later talk about in the second half of that recording, where we're talking about my toes. That involved a different incident, which was a bathroom door, and it was one of those ones that he was passing out in, and I could hear him passing out, or what it sounded like to me behind a closed doors passing out. I heard a thud, I heard a lot of commotion, I heard a glass break, and I hear what sounds like his body falling against the bathroom door. I open it to check on him, as I was accustomed to doing at that time. Johnny violently reacted to me opening the door, pushed it against me. It ran up over my toes, and he angrily came around the side of the door, swinging at me. I naturally pushed the door off of my feet, responding to the pain and also to the awareness, the knowledge that he was coming for me. Johnny later later he blamed me in his inability to understand what happened, in that he was not in his right mind, and he misunderstood that interaction and tried to blame me for starting a physical fight between us. And he even later went so far as to say, I wasn't even going to hit you. And that was the second door. I only could respond by trying to take accountability for my actions in it, what he understood my actions were, and my interpretation. And what I'm trying to say to him is, look, I can only do my best to respond. I was in pain, I was scared, and I can't promise you that when I'm scared and in pain, I won't react, thinking I know very well what our situation is and what's going to happen to me should I not react.
Thank you. So I'm going to play another clip from that same discussion, and Your Honor, it would be Plaintiff's Exhibit Depp's 356B, we'll call that, and it would be from 1:29:27 to 1:30:07. And I'd like to move the admission.
All right, any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, 356B in evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Michelle.
I can't promise you that I'll be perfect. I can't promise you I won't get physical again. God, I fucking sometimes get so mad I lose it. I can fucking promise you I'm gonna do everything to change. Promise you. I'm not gonna throw around divorce. I will not say divorce unless I really need it. Unless it's it. And then I hope you leave me. I'm not going to. And me too. I will leave you. It's fair. I can't do it, you know? And I think, honestly, if we hold each other accountable to that, it's fair.
Please explain to the jury what was going on in that part of the discussion.
That's the same conversation where I am, as I was accustomed to doing, I'm taking as much responsibility as I had to in those interactions. I have to, you know, in my relationship with Johnny, and as you have to, and somebody will not and cannot take any accountability for anything they do in a fight, as Johnny couldn't and wouldn't. I took on as much as I could for myself. You know, I had the whole relationship been blamed for everything, for his drinking, for him hitting me, for everything in between, blamed for walking away, blamed for staying. I blame myself as well. Blame myself for my part in it, blame myself for staying, blame myself for putting up with it. And frankly, at a certain point, it's easier to take the blame, feels easier. It almost feels better to take the blame for something than to accept the senseless nature of the violence you can't change. You know, it's almost more reassuring to take accountability for it than to accept the senseless nature of the violence that you can't change no matter what you do. No matter what I did. No matter what I did, still hit me.
I'm now going to take you to October 5, 2015, and Your Honor, Plaintiff's Exhibit, Depp's Exhibit 393A. It's another recording, 2:40 to 3:43. Move the admission.
No objection.
All right, 393A, plaintiffs in evidence.
Fact of the matter is, Johnny, they don't know. None of your friends, whether they saw a tiny fraction, that was the tip of an iceberg. A tip of an iceberg. That was my reaction to, yet again, this happening. That is the tip of the iceberg. And if you want to use that as some sort of like mental excuse or validation of whatever, of telling your friends or whatever they think or whatever they think about me or whatever, fine. But they only saw a tip of an iceberg. None of your friends
Let me ask you a
and
question.
none of this team have actually been there for one of our fights. They've never actually
that's
seen.
That's not true.
Really? Have they been in the hallway? Yeah.
They've
Have
heard
they
it.
seen? Baby, that is absolutely not true. They have not heard everything.
Nathan could fucking quote us.
Great, he can quote a part of it, but he has not been there. No one has actually been there for a fight in its entirety.
No, how could they?
No, exactly. So stop using that as some sort of excuse. Like they see it, they know, they work for you, or they're your friends. That
Please explain to the jury what you were discussing in that conversation.
Johnny would often use the fact that his, paid employees, his loyal staff would back him up in fights, and that he would constantly threaten to call them in to validate him. They threatened to call them to come into the room to have them back up him and say that it was, that my yelling or that I'm at fault, that I'm in the wrong, that it's all me. And he would do that in almost all of our fights, especially by 2015, that he would call his friends and he'd call his staff in to back him up, so that I knew and would accept that I'm at fault and that I'm wrong. And that was, what I had to agree to over and over again, just to even hope that we could have a conversation at some point in a more therapeutic sense so we could move the conversation along. That was his MO, if you will. He'd call people that work for him to back him up.
I'm going to take you to Thanksgiving 2015. Could you please just tell the jury, and we'll go through this one relatively briefly, but tell the jury about Thanksgiving and any altercations you had with Mr. Depp on that occasion.
Thanksgiving 2015, we had friends over. Johnny had Marilyn Manson over, and I had a few of my friends over. We had a son over, and maybe my father. I'm not entirely sure how long he was there. We had dinner together. Johnny was disappearing with Manson, doing coke.
Objection calls for speculation.
All right, I'll sustain that objection.
How do you know he was disappearing with Mr. Manson with coke?
That's what I knew of their relationship at the time. And he was
Objection calls for
disappearing every
speculation.
I'll sustain the objection.
All right.
So
Please continue with the
he
rest of
got up for a longer period of time, not the normal every 5 minutes to go to the bathroom kind, but like he just appeared for a longer period of time. And at this stage, I was really dependent on recognizing the patterns of what he was. I was reliant on trying to figure out what he was on, what combination he was on, so I knew how to deal with him. It was incumbent, on me because it affected my safety. Dealing with somebody who was really high, dealing with Johnny high on coke and speed, meaning Adderall or some version of that, is different from the opiate Johnny, which is different from the booze Johnny, or a different combination. And there was talk of Quaaludes at the time, and Johnny was trying to get it from.
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
I'll sustain the objection. Anyone else?
So I was.
Please continue.
So I wanted to know what I was dealing with. It was important to my safety to know who.
Objection, non-responsive.
All right,
I think
That's why I followed him.
Okay.
To
All right.
Your Honor.
So what did you do next?
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
What did you do next?
I went upstairs to the apartment, the main apartment, not the apartment that we were celebrating Thanksgiving in, to try to figure out what was going on. And we had an argument that took place downstairs, and I said something to provoke Johnny. I went up the stairs ahead of him to get back to the party. He grabbed me at the top of the stairs, kind of through the stairs actually, by my shirt. Kind of flung me a little bit, but I just remember I went into the bedroom, kind of retreated into the bedroom. I had a glass of wine in my hand at the time, which spilled everywhere and shattered, and I kind of retreated into the bedroom. Johnny came in after me, and there was this heavy, like vintage style glass decanter. He picked up the decanter and hurled it at my head, my face. It missed, thankfully, but smashed into a piece of art behind me in the bedroom wall, above the bed. I got past him. I think there might have been a bit of shoving. I can't really recall in the sequence of when that happened, but I wanted to go back downstairs. And I passed my closet. I had to change my shirt, and I went back downstairs to the party to finish the evening out. And I put on a face, and we finished the evening with the guests. And then more fighting happened afterwards. Okay, thank you.
So we talked about December 15, 2015, last Thursday, and also the Bahamas over the holidays. But I did miss one picture. And Michelle, can you bring up Defendant's Exhibit 518? Amber, does that accurately depict the scene portrayed?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, I'd like to move the admission of Defendant's Exhibit 518.
No objection.
All right, 518, defendants and evidence. You can publish.
And this is from December 15, I believe. Could you just please tell the jury what this depicts?
Yes, it's a picture of my bruised temple, and Johnny had his hand on my on part of my face with my face down, and he was punching my head. I'm repeatedly punching my head. That's what caused that bruise in my temple.
Thank you. Now, we went through the Bahamas before, and you returned from the Bahamas sometime late December, early January, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to take you to January, February of 2016. Can you please describe to the jury what was going on with you and Johnny in this January timeframe after this December 15 and the Bahamas incidents?
After the Bahamas, Johnny's sobriety fell apart. There was just none of it. It was, so he stopped communicating with the medical team that he had hired.
Objection calls for speculation.
How do you know that?
I was there. They fired him.
Objection calls for hearsay.
I'll sustain the objection.
Okay. Without telling what the medical people did, go ahead and tell what was going on with you and Johnny.
Yeah, his mental health, for lack of what it looked like, his mental health was just falling apart. It's what it looked like.
Objection calls for speculation.
I'll sustain the objection.
What did you observe that led you to believe that his mental health was falling apart?
Objection, Your Honors. Calls for speculation.
She can say what she
Leading.
observed.
I'll sustain the objection as to leading. Next question.
What, if anything, did you observe about Mr. Depp's state?
He was hallucinating, auditory.
Objection calls for speculation.
I'll sustain the objection.
Please tell the jury exactly what he was doing that led you to believe he was hallucinating.
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
What, if anything, was Mr. Depp doing that would have led you to believe he was hallucinating?
Same
Sustained.
objection.
Sustained.
Please describe what Mr. Depp was saying in January of 2016.
He was talking to people who weren't there, meaning people who were not in the room. He was communicating with people and sounds and voices that weren't there. I know because I was sometimes in the room and sometimes on the phone with him. And he would tell me I had a conversation with him that I did not have. He would say I said something that I didn't have. He would comment on somebody being in the room behind me that wasn't there. It was terrifying. It was terrifying because, once he smashed a board right next to my face, and it was unclear to me whether he was even mad at me or he was convinced that the guy he said he saw me with was in the room. I didn't know if Johnny felt the man was in the room with us or not at that point. But I remember he put his fist through a whiteboard in the kitchen. He hallucinated right in front of me. And
Objection calls for speculation.
Don't use the word hallucinate. Just describe what led you to believe
Your
that.
Honor, objection.
I'll sustain the objection. She can testify to what she observed.
Please, thank you, Your Honor. Please tell the jury what you
Your
observed.
Honor, may we approach?
Okay.
Please tell the jury what you observed.
I observed behavior from him that was erratic, irrational, and didn't seem connected to the reality that we were in.
Okay. Now I'm going to take you up to the beginning of February of 2016, February 8, February 9. Please tell the jury what transpired then with respect to Mr. Depp.
Around this time, Johnny was, again, behaving in a way that was very scary. It was terrifying. And sometimes he didn't know.
Objection calls for speculation.
I think she can describe what she's. What are you describing what you're observing?
Yes.
Then please continue.
In these kind of discussions I would have around this time, early February of 2016, sometimes in the argument he would accuse me of something, some person in the room with me that had just walked out or I was hiding, for instance. And sometimes he would hold on to that even when he seemed to have calmed down or come off of whatever bender he was on. And it was almost as if I had to confront what delusion he had or what belief he had or what accusation he made of me in a new fight altogether. Sometimes he didn't make it clear to me whether he was mad at me or he knew he was mad at me. It was terrifying. because I bore the brunt of it. And at around the 8th or 9th, we were in his Sweetser compound, the West Hollywood collection of homes that he has. And I got some cryptic texts from him in the early morning hours that scared me. I won't say what I said, but I came over to his main house. I believe I'd been across the street, and I slept on the couch. We had some interaction in the morning, which made me fearful. He didn't know whether or not, I was fearful he was going to believe that he was angry at me. Even though we weren't fighting, I wasn't fighting with him. I had done nothing wrong, but I was really worried that the momentum he was on was going to click into a direction of deciding that he was mad at me and I deserved it. And I was terrified that that was going to happen. So I had an interaction with him and got really worried about that on the morning of the 10th.
All right. Michelle, I'm going to ask you to bring up Defendant's Exhibit 638. It's already admitted in evidence, Your Honor. And this is from February 10, 2016. And I'm going to ask you to play it, Michelle.
Motherfucker! Motherfucker!
What happened? What happened? Nothing happened this morning, you know that?
Were you in here?
No.
So then nothing happened to you this morning.
Yeah, you're right. I just woke up and you were so sweet and nice. We were not even fighting this morning. All I did was say sorry.
Did something happen to you this morning? I don't think so.
No, that's the thing.
You want to see crazy? I'll give you a fucking crazy. That's crazy. Oh, you're crazy. You're crazy.
Have you drunk this whole thing this morning?
Oh, you got this going? You got this going?
I just started it.
Oh, really? Really? Sweep that shit on me,
No,
motherfucker.
I didn't. You were smashing shit.
Bye.
Why did you videotape this, Amber?
Because I knew he wouldn't remember.
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained?
Rather than what you knew, you can say what you thought. Just tell us why you...
I was afraid. It was scary. It's scary. Scared. Scared they wouldn't remember.
Objection calls for speculation.
I'll sustain the objection.
All right. So I'm going to now take you up to April 21, 2016, your 30th birthday party. Will you please tell the jury what happened that night with respect to, in particular, Mr. Depp?
At that time, we had a fitting that day or the day before, and he missed it, and he was kind of disappearing at that time, like at night, vaguely saying meetings. He had meetings, but then he'd be gone for sometimes 2 days, just not coming home and that sort of thing. Coming home after a bender
Calls for speculation
worse.
as to Bender.
I don't think that calls for speculation.
I'll sustain the objection. He's gone for 2 days. Go ahead.
And I had my birthday was coming up, and or on my birthday I said, "Are you gonna make it to my birthday party?" We had a dinner planned at our penthouse. I said it would be important for me if you made it.
Objection, hearsay.
Not offered to prove the truth of the matter
Overruled.
asserted. Thank you.
And he told me at some point that day that he had scheduled a business meeting or a money meeting, I think he said, maybe, at 7, which is around the time my birthday was planned for. It might have been planned for 8 p.m. He, of course, once my party was starting, he wasn't there. Texted me at some point to let me know that he was going to make it, but that he was running late. And that continued throughout my party. We finished dinner, and we were cleaning up, and kind of everyone was delaying leaving because we were waiting to give him an opportunity to show up before everyone left. And he let me know he was there. I tried to, without saying what I said, I tried to give him the impression that I wasn't going to get on him about drinking or anything. I just wanted him to be there. And we had a toast. We did a celebratory toast. And the guests left. And later that evening, we were in bed, and I had a book, and Johnny effectively said, what's your fucking problem now? And at the time we were getting advice from therapists without saying what they said. It was important for me not to make him feel attacked. So I chose my words carefully. I won't say what I said, but I remember being very careful about how I worded what I was feeling about my birthday and him having missed it. An argument followed that. I got up out of bed. Johnny's side of the bed was closer to the door than mine. I remember him blocking the door, blocking me to get out, and kind of shoving me down, and we had a verbal argument, and then that became a shoving match. I tried to shove him back. I kind of felt myself retreat into the bedroom. At some point, he picked up a large, I guess it's a Magnum size, not a normal size, a large size bottle of champagne, and hurled it at me. This time it went through a painting, and I loved this painting. I remember it just went right through the canvas, left a giant hole in it. And I remember thinking we shouldn't have art in our bedroom anymore. The fight continued into the salon area, which is outside of our bedroom at the top of the stairs. Johnny picked up my phone. I don't know why. I don't remember what he was saying when he did it, but he picked up my phone and threw it out of the open window of the salon area, out onto the street, out onto the downtown street that this window overlooked. In that moment, I went, "Oh no, you don't." I saw his on the countertop and picked it up and threw his immediately, 2 seconds later. I didn't want to be stranded this time alone, meaning I didn't want to be the only one stranded without a phone, which had happened to me already several times before this from Johnny. So I picked up his phone, threw it as well. And I said that I wanted to go stay somewhere else for the evening. I left that room, went into the office. We were still screaming names at each other and screaming at each other. And I walk around the side of his desk, and the next thing I know, he has me by the hair and he pulls me down. I hit the side of the desk. I remember things flying off of the side of the desk that I hit with my body. I remember trying to fight him off of me. at some point, we're back in my main bedroom, and I believe I was getting my toothbrush out of that bathroom, and when I came out, we had another shoving match, but this one, he kind of like, I remember he chest bumped me in this like bro-y way, chest bumped me and fell to the floor, and when I got back up, he kind of held me down by the shoulders down on the side of the bed and kind of held me, wrestled me down on the bed. I remember I got up once or twice before I ended up on the bed, and he grabbed me, did this thing that he did sometimes, and he would taunt me, grabbed me by the pubic bone, pubic area. Just as best I can describe it is he kind of just pushed me down, held me down by it, and kind of pulled me into it, and he was asking me, kind of taunting me, asking me if I thought I was so fucking tough. I think you're such a fucking tough guy, huh? Are you so tough now? Look who's so tough. You want to be a man? Tough like a man now? That happened for a bit of time. I'm not quite sure. I think at some point he left. I remember at some point shortly after that, I remember he was still in the apartment when this happened, but I remember kind of collapsing on the floor and being exhausted. It's just, I remember feeling exhausted and crying and kind of throwing in the towel, if you will. I remember saying to him, just, can we not fight like this? Like, can we start over? Is there anything that we can do? Like, this is really messed up, but can we just not do this, please? Can we stop doing this? Just don't leave. It's my birthday. Let's just call it couch. Let's call it truce and not have it end like this. I don't want to have it end like this. I was just so tired, hurt. And I remember crying and feeling ridiculous that after this I would be crying and saying these things. I'm embarrassed saying it now. He responded cruelly. He told me it's what I fucking deserve, and that I'd wake up alone, and that no one would ever love me because all of this, pointing to my face or body, all of this was going to go away. No one would ever love me. My tits sag, no one would ever love me, and I better get used to waking up alone. And he said this was all my fault and what I asked for. And he left. I heard him come back in, the downstairs, you can hear the door slam. I remember hearing it open and thinking, oh God, is this going to happen again? What's going on now? And then shortly after, I kind of peeked around to the top of the stairs where you can kind of peer into the lower level. And I just see him briefly, momentarily, and he just screams at me, happy fucking birthday, and stormed out. At some point, I walked downstairs and saw that he had also left me a note to that effect.
How did he leave a note for you?
I was written on a piece of paper as best I can recall, but I'm not sure.
And so then the next day, what did you do?
I texted, I can't say what I texted. I woke up that morning, the morning of my 30th birthday, and I woke up to my best friend crawling in bed with me, and putting her arms around me. And I remember wondering how she walked in, because there was a lot of glass on the floor. There's lots of glass. And she put her arms around me and showed me a birthday video that all of my friends, my childhood friends, all of my loved ones made. Of course, stupidly, the first thing I asked her is why Johnny wasn't in the video, because it had been recorded before. It had been recorded sometime before it was clear. And she said that she'd been asking for a few months, and Johnny...
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
I offered to prove the truth.
All right, I'll overrule. Go ahead.
And so we got out of my bed and grabbed a few things and got the dogs, left for our plans, which our plans had been to go to Coachella, which is a music festival that happens in California. And that had been the plan for a while, that's how we would go and celebrate my birthday. And I remember, as I am accustomed to doing, just trying to move on, and remember in vain trying to put on a brave face and have a good time, even though it was impossible.
Let me stop you for a few things. What, if any, plans were there for Mr. Depp to join you at Coachella?
He was supposed to drive down, have dinner, stay in the room, maybe do some writing or something like that in the room.
At Coachella?
At Coachella, where we were. Coachella happens in a different part of California than we lived in. We lived in Los Angeles, and this happens about 2 to 3 hours away. So I finally got in my car back, and I drove with my best friends in the car.
And I'm going to stop you again because I just have a couple more questions before we go into that part. You said you brought the dogs. Who were the dogs you brought?
Johnny's dog, at the time, Boo. My dog, Pistol. We shared them. They're teacup Yorkies, and I believe Raquel, my best friend's dog, which is a mutt.
Okay. What, if any, issues did Boo have with bathroom problems, if you will?
Objection, leading and relevance.
Overruled all that.
She had eaten Johnny's weed when she was a puppy and had bowel control issues for her entire life, among some other issues. She was, we regularly had to take her to the vet to try to figure out, well, what was wrong with this dog. Never met a dog that was quite like this. So she had some control issues, hence why she liked to burrow in the bed. She liked to be in the, by the foot of the bed underneath the covers. And it was customary that they slept in bed with us, but Boo, having the issues she had, we have to leave her in bed so that she wouldn't be encouraged to go to the bathroom, which would happen almost immediately once you put her down on the floor. And sometimes it happened in bed too. But yeah.
So what, if anything, did you notice about any bathroom issues in your bed before you left for Coachella?
Well, Raquel and I were both in that bed with the dogs, and I didn't notice anything, but we left them in the bed while we packed a bag to go to Coachella, so that Boo particularly didn't lose control of her or didn't go to the bathroom on the floor. So we leave them in bed until you're ready to take them outside to the patio, which is their designated bathroom break area.
And what, if any, plans were there? How often did you have housekeeping at that time at your house?
The housekeepers were there every morning. Okay. Or they came every day, as far as I know.
Okay. Now, we'll get you to Coachella, but why did you tell Starling Jenkins that you had been involved in a prank gone wrong?
Objection, hearsay, leading.
I said why, Your Honor. I didn't say what she said.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Okay. Did you commit any kind of prank?
Absolutely not. Okay. Absolutely not.
And why would that not be something you would do?
First of all, I don't think that's funny. I don't know what a grown woman does. I was not also in a pranking mood. My life was falling apart. I was at a crossroads in my life that was really serious, and I had just been attacked on my 30th birthday by my violent husband, with whom I was desperately in love and knew I needed to leave. It was not really a jovial time, and I don't think that's funny, period. That's disgusting.
And what, if any, understanding did you have of Mr. Depp coming back to your bedroom that night or the next morning?
Objection calls for speculation.
I'm asking what her understanding was.
No, I'll sustain the objection.
Okay. Had you had any conversations with Mr. Depp about him coming back to the house the next day?
No, Johnny didn't come back to that house. That was my, he owned it, but that was my house when we were having any sort of problem. In fact, that was my house just 90% of the time because he just didn't come back. That was not a place that Johnny was going to be in, that Johnny was in, and he had stormed out on my birthday, and as per what we did, he would go and stay at his West Hollywood home, and I would stay at the downtown places. He wasn't going to come back to the
Objection calls for speculation.
I think she explained her answer on that
Okay,
one, what she
I'll sustain
thought.
just the last part. Okay, next question.
Thank you. All right, so let's take you to Coachella. Who drove?
I drove.
Okay. And who was in your vehicle?
My sister, my friend Savannah, I believe, my best friend Raquel, just my girlfriends. I typically surround myself with my girlfriends. It's my sport.
Was there any occasion in which you were riding in the vehicle that Starling Jenkins was driving?
He picked us up from Coachella in the evening when we, as a group, all were ready to leave. That was the day that we went, which was the day that I took MDMA and mushrooms at the same time. So realized very shortly after what a horrible idea that was, considering the state that my life was in. I highly don't recommend that combination at the time. So I didn't feel like being in a crowd. I didn't feel like being at Coachella. I had intended to try to have a good time despite what was going on in my personal life, and I realized that was just not going to happen. And so I wanted to go home. Meaning to be in a bed. I wanted to be, I just wanted to be held by my best friend and watch a movie, and that's what we did. I didn't feel well and wanted to leave.
Okay. And when you said you rode back with Starling Jenkins, was it just you, or did you have other people in the vehicle with you?
And when we left Coachella, it was my entire group. I wasn't ever alone with Starling. I certainly wasn't anywhere near him. I didn't have a conversation with him. I sat in the very back seat with my best friend next to me, and it was a whole group of us.
Thank you. Your Honor, I don't know, this might be a good breaking point.
All right, that's fine. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and take our morning recess. Do not discuss the case with anybody, and don't do any outside research. We'll take 15 minutes, okay? All right, we'll just come back then at 10:50. Is that okay? All right, 10:50.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.